You are listening to Unified Through Chronic and Mental Illness with your hosts, Angie Roberts and Kimberly Murphy. Please be advised that some of the topics of this podcast can be triggering and sensitive in nature.
There are more than 1 million annual limb loss amputees globally, one every 30 seconds.
Hi guys, welcome to Unified. This is the premiere of season 3. We're super excited. This is Kimberly Murphy. I'm here with Angie Roberts.
Hey,
and today
guys.
we have a great story for you about a man who suffered a limb loss, suffered addiction, and rose again to serve other people. It's an awesome story, and I hope you'll stick around. But first, let's talk a little bit about amputation.
Amputation presents many challenges. It affects function, sensation, and body image. I can only imagine. In most cases, the predominant experiences of the amputee is one of loss, and not only the obvious loss of the limb, but also resulting in loss of function, self-image, career, and relationships. And I can only imagine how it would affect. I don't know. I say I can only imagine. I actually can't imagine.
I can't either. Honestly, I can't.
Right.
Yeah. I know it must be extremely depressing.
It has to be. Yes, around 30% of amputees have depression, psychological morbidity, lower self-esteem, increased levels of social isolation. And they observe all this, in the follow-up after the amputation. Also, there are other psychological problems that show up like PTSD, anxiety, and body dysmorphic disorder.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think of that, but that makes total sense.
Because my friend Joey talks about his addiction in his story, we wanted to throw y'all a few stats. The CDC says the opioid epidemic is considered a public health emergency with 136 deaths per day and climbing. 50,000 people die per year of opioid OD, and there are 10 million people that misuse opioids a year. Opioids are a factor in 7 out of 10 overdoses.
That's crazy. Oh my goodness.
Right.
Well, and this is why we've talked about this before in a past episode about in the last season, I think, about how this problem has really affected the chronic illness community. But those are some horrible statistics. That's terrible.
We would like to welcome longtime friend of mine, Joey Nault, to Unified. Patient advocate, peer counselor, and pastor. Welcome, Joey. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became an amputee.
Well, so I've been an amputee for, I would have been April of 2008 is when I lost my leg.
Wow.
So April of 2006, I was actually at the park here in town or here in Mountain Home. I was playing on the jungle gym. I broke my ankle.
Oh my goodness.
When they did the surgery, when they did the initial surgery, they put a big rod through the bottom of my foot, like in my heel. And then they put some screws through the side of my ankle to pin it together. And they said I had a reaction to the metal that gave me an infection. And then the infection turned into MRSA, which is a antibiotic resistant infection that there's only one antibiotic, vancomycin, that you can combat it with.
Do you mean MRSA? Are you talking about MRSA?
Yes. Yeah, that's
Okay.
yes. MRSA is MRSA. So fun little fact, MRSA can actually turn into what they call VRSA, which is vancomycin resistant, which is what I am borderline now. And that's one of the things that you have to watch out for after you've had vancomycin so many times. Because if you become vancomycin resistant and you get an infection again, there are no antibiotics that they can give you.
Oh,
Oh my
wow.
goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a crazy thing to get when you stop and think about it, because the bacteria that you get MRSA from, a MRSA infection from, actually, like, my MRSA cleans my skin, but if you get it in your cut, it's bad for you. So it's like always been around. It's just something really hard for them to treat. I came off the jungle gym, broke my ankle. They pinned it together. I went in for my 2-week checkup, and when I went in for my 2-week checkup, my ankle kind of looked like, it wasn't as swollen as like you would think, like a softball, but it was about maybe the size of a baseball, and it was black. I mean, you could tell that there was a really bad infections had set in.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So what did they do at that point?
Well, so the first thing that they do is they go in and they take a culture and a biopsy. So they drain the fluid, and then they take like a little, for lack of a better word, they take like a bite of the flesh and a part of the fluid, and they test both of it to see what infection it is, what kind of antibiotic they need, if they need a full range spectrum antibiotic, if they need something that is a specific antibiotic to what you have. Just kind of the opening stages of the biology of the bug, I guess you would say. They found out that it was MRSA, and they put me on vancomycin, which is a IV. So you have to get a PICC line. I can't remember what the PICC stands for, but basically it's a line that goes straight into your heart. So instead of the vancomycin going into a vein, when they put it in, it actually goes straight into your heart, and it's dispersed from your heart.
Wow.
Now, once they start giving you vancomycin, you have to do blood levels every 2 to 3 days to make sure that they don't get too much vancomycin in your system, because if you get too much vancomycin in your system, you can have permanent hearing loss.
Oh, wow.
What were you feeling emotionally while all this was happening?
So, in the beginning, honestly, I was young enough that it really, at first, it didn't have much gravity, to be honest with you. I kind of thought that, once they told me that they were going to put the PICC line in, and then that they were going to send me home. Because first I started out, they sent me up to Cox in Springfield, and I was up there for nearly 6 months in isolation.
That must have been so hard, though, to be in isolation for so long.
It was crazy too, because so some of the nurses took it seriously, and I mean, like, suited up in like hazmat suits, head to toe, the full headgear, band on, and everything. Yeah, it was crazy. They would treat it. The antibiotics would make the swelling go down. It would make the fluid go away. The ankle would start. It would still look misshapen, deformed, obviously, because it was broken and traumatic, and it was, even after it was going to heal, it was still going to be, misshapen from everything that had happened. But I started going through this vicious cycle where I would get out of the hospital. I would have like 2 weeks worth of antibiotics, like your normal, like, get out of the hospital, take your antibiotics till they're done, and then go on about life. Well, I would get out of the hospital. I would take my antibiotics for 2 weeks. And then about a week after I took the last of my antibiotics, the infection would come back. And so I got on this, basically this like month cycle where I'd be in the hospital for about a week. I'd get out for 2 weeks with the antibiotics. And then about a week after the antibiotics, my ankle would swell back up and I'd go back into the hospital.
Oh my goodness. So how did you get from there to actually them having to remove, what is it, up to the knee?
I'm below the knee.
Below the knee.
Yeah, I've got about 6 to 8 inches below my knee of a residual limb. So in my case, I was athletic. I was athletic growing up, and I was athletic when it happened. And this was in 2006. And by 2008, when I had the amputation, I'd gone through nearly 91 or 92 surgeries.
Oh, wow.
you
That's a
know,
lot.
yeah, and it was, I mean, so they're not, you know, and they're not all, they weren't all like major surgeries, but they were all like knock you out and scrape a little bone, or knock you out and open you up and drain some, or take a little of the necrotic tissue away. So, you know, we did that for 2 years, just over and over and over. And I started looking into prosthetics because it was getting to the point where I didn't feel like it was a good idea to continue to go under. I was already starting to notice, well, now looking back, on top of what ended up being, you know, the drug abuse from the pain pills, because it was a necessity being, it went from a necessity being on them to a necessity being addicted to them because I was on them for so long, to them becoming an actual full-blown addiction. That I also started noticing that I think the anesthesia started putting, like, I started noticing my memory was getting worse and worse.
Right.
And I mean, you know, I can't blame it all on the anesthesia, because I did plenty on my own to not help myself any. But, you know, going on a man-made nap that many times can't be good for your memory either.
How long were you in active addiction to pain pills?
14 years, maybe. So because of my sports career, I blew out a knee that at a very young age I had to have rebuilt. I started on pain pills then, and I would call that a functioning addiction, because I actually did need them, but I couldn't function without them.
Right.
And then that kind of reared its ugly head into being just a full-blown addiction. Let's see, I've been clean now for 3 years. So
That's wonderful.
Awesome.
yeah, I mean, so it's been a good 15 years at least.
Right.
Somewhere in there. I haven't done the math. It's one of those things. So I know that seems like something I should know, but like, if you talk to me and my wife, one of the big things we believe in is that you speak into existence what you speak. So, you know, I am not an addict. I was somebody who was addicted to pills. So to me, I don't celebrate being clean. I celebrate the fact that I beat the addiction and I move on with life. I was delivered by God. You know, he delivered me with the strength to get through it. And if I continue to dwell on it, then am I really delivered? Am I really over it if I keep going back to it, kind of thing?
Right. I understand that. Yeah.
You know, so I went through all those surgeries. And then in 2008, I talked to Dr. Green, who is no longer with us. He passed away a few years back. But I talked to Dr. Green and I told him I didn't want to go through any more surgeries, that I wanted to amputate the leg, that I had looked at. You know, I had looked at some possibilities for some different prosthetics that could put me back to playing like softball, and maybe put me back to playing some like fall baseball and stuff like that, which I was a baseball player all growing up and through college and stuff. And so because amputation was elective at that point, I actually had to go see 2 psychiatrists to make sure that I was within my, in my right mind. And then I had to get Dr. Green to agree to do the surgery, to do the amputation, because I was only 26 at the time that I broke my ankle, and 28 at the time when he took my leg off.
Oh, wow.
Right.
That's
and a 28-year-old elective amputation is not something most doctors want to put on their resume.
Yeah.
So
it was probably really needed. You know, it would have happened eventually. It sounds like.
I think we were going to that direction, because if you can picture it, looking straight at my ankle, if you were looking straight at my ankle, half of it was gone, almost like a baseball had hit my ankle and went through it.
Oh my goodness.
So it kind of looked like a tree that was about to fall.
It must have been really painful too.
Oh,
I
my
mean,
gosh.
yeah, I can't imagine that.
It was one of those things where I was like, it was, people kept telling me, well, at least you still have your leg, but I didn't really. I mean, it was just like dragging a dead piece of meat around with me. Like I didn't walk normal. I couldn't really step on it because it hurt too bad. And I didn't trust that it wasn't going to break. I mean, if you would have seen it, you would have thought, you would have thought the same thing, because it didn't look like there was enough of a leg there left anymore.
Right.
So it wasn't that, I wasn't thankful that I still had a leg. They didn't really still have a leg,
Mm-hmm.
So it was really a blessing that Dr. Green had an open enough mind that after I did the psychiatrist, he was willing to do the surgery.
So how did you feel after the surgery was completed?
So in the beginning stages after the surgery was done, I was what I thought was happy. I spent a lot of time making sure that the people in my life that I loved were able to cope with it. I did a lot of talking with them to make sure they were okay, to make sure they understood that it was the best decision, to make sure they understood that, it didn't mean I was any less of a person because I was missing a leg, that that it was just the best decision as, health wise for me, that I was young enough that I could get a prosthetic and bounce back and be better than I would have been, because I would have an actual functioning leg, even though it would be a prosthetic, but it would be way better than the piece of bone and meat that I was dragging
And
along.
all of those surgeries you were having for
Right.
Right.
And it sounds like, so were you trying to convince them, or were you trying to convince yourself?
Well, now that I had time to grow, mature, and hindsight's always 2020, it was more of convincing myself. So I ended up, and we've already touched on it, with I ended up with a raging drug problem. And honestly, pain pills was, that was just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, when you have addictive tendencies, you're willing to open up to anything that's going to make you feel better.
Right.
And,
Absolutely.
at that point, you're not necessarily looking for something to make you feel high. You're making for something to make you feel better.
Right.
True.
So, there was psychedelics, there was the pain pills, there was, just whatever. There was
whatever came along, huh?
As unproud of it as I am, there was meth, there was coke, there was uppers, there was downers, there was whatever I could get my hands on that I thought would make me feel better and keep me moving forward. Because that was the goal I had in my head. As long as I could keep moving forward, everything would be okay. Because if I stopped, it would catch up with me.
Right.
I would have to deal with everything.
Right.
And I would crash.
And that would be painful.
Yes. And as long as I kept moving forward, in my head, I was dealing with things because I was moving forward, but that's not really what was happening.
So we've gone from what your amputee, and now we went through the drug addiction. So now, how did Joey become a pastor? I can't wait to hear this, because I don't know the answer.
Really? Because you went through all of this trauma and through an active addiction, and what next?
So it's kind of funny because this part is kind of fun to tell, because I've been on both sides of the bars, believe it or not. So I was an officer at one point, all the way up to a federal officer in the ports.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
To being behind bars. Never for anything, and this is only by the grace of God, because he was watching out for a dummy while I was doing dumb things. I only ever got arrested for not paying a ticket.
Oh, good.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. I never got arrested for a DUI. I never hurt anybody, thank God.
Right.
I never did anything that couldn't be come back from, and I never did anything that would keep me from being able to go somewhere in Minnesota. So I can go into schools, I can still go into the prisons, I can still go into I don't have any marks against me.
That's wonderful.
I can honestly say that literally is God. That even when I wasn't being the person I should have been, he was still looking out for me. So it ended up being, about 3.5 years ago. At that point, my daughter and my wife, now she was my girlfriend then, she had decided that she had enough, It was a July 4th. I had gotten drunk out at Cloud Nine. Made a fool out of myself. Managed to, just because of some of my law enforcement background and stuff, know a little bit more than the cops who were on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to keep from getting arrested, but it didn't. I mean, I still was an embarrassment, and it was still bad.
Yeah.
So it wasn't long after that Casey took my daughter, and she went and stayed with her aunt. We gave up our house. She kind of started moving on with her life, and I kind of just stood still. Like I was trying to beat drinking on my own and not doing a very good job of it. I had managed at that point to quit drugs. So one night, I was laying on my couch, and I can't even remember how much I drank. And when I tell you I was an alcoholic, the amount that I drank I would drink a half a gallon of vodka in a day.
Whoa.
I mean, it was bad enough that I would drive to the liquor store, get a pint of vodka at the drive-thru, pull away from the drive-thru, get on the street. The vodka would be gone already. I would have to turn back around and go back to the drive-thru again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really, really bad.
Wow.
It was a bad deal. So it was kind of, I was a 30-something-year-old man, so it was really hard for anybody to tell me that I had to quit drinking, because, well, again, I was 30, I was paying my bills, I was living my best life, and it was nobody's business what I was doing on my time. Me and a buddy of mine, we were running an open mic night at a bar, which was totally opposite of what you should be doing if you're trying to get your drink under control, running an open mic night at a bar.
Right.
So, but of course, in my head, I told everybody to leave me alone, that I could do it. I'm gonna do this. Leave me alone. None of your business what I'm doing. You're not my girlfriend anymore. Don't worry about what I do on my time. Yada yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
So it ends with me on the couch one night. It had been a particularly busy night of drinking. And I passed out on my couch at some point. I'm not even sure when it was I passed out. And I woke up at it was like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I had drank so much that my muscles had locked up on me because I was so dehydrated.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was kind of drawn together. Like I was kind of drawn up. Like my arms were drawn into my chest, and my legs were tight. I couldn't move them. I couldn't really speak, and I couldn't move. So I could look over, I could see my cell phone sitting on the coffee table, but I couldn't reach it to call anybody. Mm-hmm. And obviously I didn't feel well. And I thought for sure right then, I was like, okay, well, this is it. I'm literally looking at death. Casey is going to not hear from me for a day or two. She's going to get super mad because she hasn't heard from me. She's going to come storming over here and to find out what's going on. She's going to come in the house, and she's going to find me dead on the couch. So Friday night, I'm still drunk from the night before. Friday was the scary day, still drunk. Friday night, my cousin shows up, who is a minister, and I had called them earlier also.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I start talking to him, and he tells me, so Saturday is our Bible study. So we sit. He comes in, he sits and he prays with me, and I go to bed, and he tells me, not to not go and get any more to drink. And I don't think I had any more money at that point. And so I go to bed, and I wake up Saturday, and I'm still, I tell you Thursday, it was I don't know how I didn't die, honestly, because I woke up Saturday still drunk at that point. It was
wow.
Yeah, it was a ton.
I've been there. Well,
Saturday night, Saturday afternoon, evening, my cousin comes and he picks me up, and we go to the Bible study, and I make it probably 2 minutes at the Bible study because everybody can smell the liquor on me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so, do you guys remember Eddie Elliott from school? Jumbo Elliott?
Yes.
So he was one of the people at the Bible study with me. So, well, if you remember Eddie Elliott, do you remember Joey Martinez? His name's Joey Archie now. That's my cousin. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
So So Eddie takes me outside and he's like, dude, he's like, you need to go to AA. When do you want to go? So, I start hemming and hawing and trying to come up with an excuse of, when the next night is that I can go. Like, I want to be at the Bible study, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, no, no. The answer is you're going right now.
Yeah.
So he takes me to my first night, and kind of everything just clicks. Like everything falls into place while I'm sitting in the first AA meeting.
Mhm.
So while I'm sitting there, God kind of just starts showing me like everything I had done, everything I had been through. He kind of full circled everything. Like, you lost your leg, and instead of asking for help or coming to me for help, you tried to take it all on your own. You tried to find help at the bottom of every bottle you get your hands on. You tried to make yourself feel better with every drug you could get your hand on. And instead of just coming and asking me for help, here's where you're at. Is this where you want to be? Like, do you want to continue this road, or do you want to be, something different, something new?
Right.
So, I broke down in the meeting, and to be honest with you, I don't really even remember that meeting because I had so much going on in my head. But I know at that Monday, Eddie helped me get into HRA, which is the alcohol and drug rehab program for the county here in Baxter County. And
Nice.
since he's a probation officer, he was able to call them. And even though I wasn't in trouble, she was able to schedule me in and take me on as a client.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful.
I called. Do you remember Jamie Leach?
Yes.
Okay, so she runs the First Step program in the hospital. So First Step is a wonderful program. If you guys don't know about that, First Step, you check in. They take your cell phone from you as a precaution, and it's a precaution that's needed so that you can't call. It is not so that you can't call to get away. It's because most of the time when you're an addict, your family is something that will set you off.
Yeah, trigger.
So if you're trying to get clean, the worst thing you can do is call and argue with your wife.
Right.
Or
Right.
call and hear bad news about your kid getting in trouble, or call and hear something bad about life. So they take your cell phone. Your family is more than welcome to call and check on you. The only drawback of it is it's only a 3-day program. It is only designed to help you get through the hard parts of detoxing. Because they give you they have medicine and stuff to help you get through the chemical dependency parts.
Right.
Oh, okay. I see.
Detox hospital. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why they call it First Step. So it's
it's the very first step. Right.
It's the very first step of getting through it. Jamie helps set you up with if you're going to go into like a long-term care, or like, so in my case, I didn't want to do a long-term care, but I did have a long conversation with God while I was doing my detoxing, and my resolve was I was going to do 90 meetings in 90 days. And what was counted as 90 meetings in 90 days for me was anything that had to do with church, anything that had to do with HRA, which was the drug and alcohol counseling, or anything that had to do with AA. So if I had to do one of those 3 things in the day for 90 days.
Good. That's good.
It was awesome. It was really eye-opening, and it was nice because I was able to, for the first time in a long time, make everything about me. And by becoming selfish and making my sobriety and everything about me, I actually became a better person and a better father and a better husband and a better man for everybody around me.
It's kind of like in mental health, like self-care is a very important thing for us that have mental health issues, because if we don't do our self-care, then we're not healthy for the people around us.
Well, even in chronic illness,
and chronic illness too.
Yep.
Yeah. If we don't rest so we can totally relate to that.
Yeah. You find yourself, burning the candle at both ends. And then who are you good for?
Exactly.
Nobody, not even yourself.
And that's something I honestly fight still. And that's part of the addictive personality is So instead of, because I can't change my personality, but what I can do is I can point my addictive personality toward God-driven things.
Right.
But one of the things that I have to make sure I point myself toward, because, you know, God does want you to rest. So sometimes I have to remember to point myself toward resting, because I will like wear my body down to the point where I am worthless.
Right.
Yeah, and that's not
I can
good.
relate to that. Yeah.
And sometimes like sometimes I look at some of my friends, like how much stuff that they do, and I wonder, like, how do you have time? Like, like 'cause I feel like I do a lot of stuff, and there's some people I know that do like 10 times the amount of stuff I do, and like I'm just like, wow, either I'm terrible at time management or you have a time machine.
Right, right.
Some people are just so
Comparison can really like tear you down though, because
Yeah.
everyone's
It
different.
can,
Yeah.
and that's funny. So we did a food giveaway. We do every month on the third Saturday. We do a food giveaway for our church, and we go to a couple of different places around town. And
Mhm.
I do the sermon for them. And one of the things I touched on with the kids today is we were never meant to compare ourselves to each other, because what God called me to do isn't what he called Kimberly to do, isn't what he called Angie to do. So there's no reason for me to compare myself to Kimberly, because when she does something amazing, I should congratulate her, but her amazing isn't my amazing.
Yeah.
So
So
when
true.
we lift each other up and help each other be amazing, that's when things get done. But when we start to compare ourselves to each other, we actually end up tearing each other down, because if I can't be as good as Kimberly, normally the human reaction is to say something bad about her,
Right.
or tear down one of her accomplishments so I can build one of mine up.
Right.
And that's just,
Exactly.
That's a great
terrible
lesson.
Yeah. So it's funny that you bring that up, because that is so true. Like, comparison just breeds contentment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So from AA, what happened
So
to now?
So after AA, I did my 90 meetings in 90 days, and we kind of touched on that a little bit earlier. You know, I decided that
Right.
that definitely after 90 days, I was going to be done with AA, because I wanted to move forward with that part of my life. And I definitely decided also that as I was moving forward, I was starting to see the things that God had planned for me in my life, but that I was running from. I was starting to see things make sense that didn't make sense before. I was starting to see why there were certain things of my personality that if I lined it up with the Bible, it made sense to me.
Right.
So I decided a faith-based recovery was something that was going to be better for me than AA. And then by the grace of God, Casey called me one day and she was like, "Hey, why don't you come check out my church?" I went and checked her church out. And the first time I went, I literally knew Casey and one other person, and probably half of the congregation hugged me when I walked in.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I remember sitting. I can't remember what the sermon was about, but I remember sitting on the front row and just losing all the baggage and everything just coming out of me and coming off of me, and just crying, and just like salvation work starting to be done. Just finally, like, it was like one of those things, like when your dad finally put his arm around me and he was like, "There you go. Now you're getting it." Like, okay. Like,
Right.
Aw.
and it wasn't even, what was amazing was, it wasn't even that he was withholding anything from me. It was the fact that I was taking it upon myself to look for it in every other place but to him.
Mm-hmm.
We can definitely block our own blessings.
Yes, absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to a newly amputee?
Well, my advice would be to listen to your body and to not be afraid to reach out to somebody. I mean, there's people like me who are either out there for spiritual help, or even just mental health. I go at it from both angles.
Right.
No. And just don't be afraid, because the worst thing you can do is think that you can do it alone, because no matter what you believe, we're not supposed to do anything alone. And it doesn't matter if you believe in God, if you don't believe in God, or if you believe in another religion. It doesn't, your belief system isn't important at that point. What is important is we are not built to do anything alone, no matter what you believe.
I so agree with that. Yeah.
I agree too.
Being alone does nothing but put you in a box that can put you in the ground quicker than anything else. And other than that would also be, being an amputee doesn't define who I am. It's just something about me.
Right.
Right.
I like to think my passion for Jesus defines me more than my leg does. My leg helps get me in the door on some places.
They get you a handicap sticker.
It does. You want to know one of the greatest things about it? Like one of the total upsides is when you go to Six Flags or Silver Dollar City, you totally get to go to the front of the line.
Awesome.
There's no line waiting, and then you ride the ride, and when the ride ends, they just ask if you want to stay on and ride it again.
That's nice.
Yeah. So I tried to just don't let it define you. Like after I got done with all my rehab and stuff, I went to school. I got my doctorate of divinity.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a pastor now, like you touched on earlier. I do the whole peer counseling thing, the advocacy thing, and it's all great. It's all awesome because I get to be with people from their lowest point to their highest point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I get to be there with them to hold their hand through losing the leg to giving them a high five when they're walking out the door, having their prosthetic.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, and everybody needs someone like that. So is there a website or anything like that for any number they can call or anything, or do you know off the top of your head?
So there's the Amputee Coalition of America, and that's it's amputee-coalition.com or .com or .org. I can never remember. It's on my computer. You can do jpno.com. You can look up JPNO on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. And then my number, if you don't have a problem with giving out, people are more than welcome to call me if they need to talk about anything, or if they need prayer, or they need to set anything up or anything like that.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we don't have a problem with that. If you don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell it here now? What is your phone number?
Yeah, that's fine. My number is 870-404-3634.
Awesome.
And I would much rather somebody call me at 2 a.m. than call their drug dealer or end up doing something stupid. So that is definitely a number that people are more than welcome to use.
And you also said that the amputees have a high suicide rate, correct?
They do, because you get body dysmorphia.
Right.
Oh boy.
And then depending on the circumstances, there's also some cases of PTSD because of the trauma that can be. So I was lucky because mine was, basically voluntary, but some people, if you lose an accident, your lights go out and then you wake up and the next thing you know, you're missing something.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
That is a huge thing to try to compute.
I can't imagine trying to compute that. So
me either.
I'm an amputee, and I don't know how you could do it either, to be honest with you. It's like,
Right.
I mean, man, because it was tough. It was tough enough. It was tough enough knowing it was coming. So not knowing it.
Yeah.
So that's why we lose so many, and that's why this is also something that's so near and dear to my heart, because that kills me that, losing a body part is rough, but it's not worth losing your life over.
Right.
it's hard to get that through sometimes, and I understand that because, like you said, body image is pounded into our heads.
Right.
It's true.
Unfairly so, but it's so.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Like I was telling Angie before we did this, like I try to be as open and honest as I can be because I would rather everybody see my bumps and my scars and all my bloody clothes so that they don't have to do all this stupid stuff that I did.
Right.
Because
Well,
I
I
think that's-
appreciate it. I appreciate your
Yeah, I
honesty.
appreciate it too.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you being on the show.
Mhm.
Really
no
do.
problem. No problem at all. I really enjoyed it actually, and it's one of those things where one of the things I learned in Bible school the very first time was you can preach to 10,000 people, but if you miss that one person who that message was meant for, then it doesn't matter how big the crowd was. So I honestly hope that one person is out there and that they're listening and that they get a little help or that they get a little hope or that they call if they need something.
I hope
That's
so
wonderful.
too. I hope so too.
I hope so too. Yes. Thank you so much, Joey.
Thank you so much for being with us, Joey. Your story is so inspiring, and I do hope that people take you up on your offer to help them out if they need it.
Yeah, you guys, both of y'all or anybody listening, point people my direction.
I mean, we
Okay.
we say all the time we're stronger together, and it's absolutely true. Well, that was a really inspirational story, and I really hope our listeners got something out of it. Angie,
Same here.
what is the mantra for this week?
You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You must do the thing you think you cannot do.
Yeah, that's a really good quote right there because, I always tell people if they're losing something and they're afraid of the future, you just never know what's around the next corner. And
Right.
sometimes something's taken away from you to give you something better. So keep that in mind. And there's a lot of things you can do. Like you think you can never get through it, but you actually can. So
It's so
I
true.
think Joey's story is a perfect example of that.
Yes.
And so I hope you all enjoyed this episode. We have so much stuff coming up for season 3, which we gave you guys all a taste of that in the teaser. If you like this episode, if it's helped you in any sort of way, please share it, like it.
Yes.
Join up on our social media. You can find everything at the end of this podcast. We'll tell you how. And join us next week when we come back and talk about COVID long haulers and how it affects the brain. And please remember that we are stronger together, and we'll see you next time.
Mask up. Peace out, guys.
Unified through chronic and mental illness can be found at anchor.fm/unified. There you can find all social media links as well as other ways to listen.